There you go. The floor is yours.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I hope you guys more energized after the coffee break. I'm very excited to be here today. I've been watching BotConf videos for quite a while already, and if a year ago someone told me that I'm going to be here as a speaker, I would never believe it. But I'm here, and my talk has quite long name, but in a nutshell, I'm going to speak about malware, which is capable to launch brute forcing attacks against content management systems. So let me introduce myself and people who were doing this research. My name is Anna, and my colleague and co-author of this research, Veronica Valeros. We are both threat researchers from CTA, Cognitive Threat Analytics. This is the group within Cisco which is applying machine learning algorithms in order to find malicious activities and anomalies on the network. So me and Veronica are basically looking at the output of the traffic, of the network traffic, and classify malware and study malware as well. I would like to thank also Sebastian Garcia and Stratosphere IPS project for providing data sets for the malware we're going to discuss today. So let's define the scope. I divided the presentation into two parts. The first part is going to be the overview of brute forcing malware. This is essential to understand the scale of the problem. And the second part is going to be a deep dive on the Trojan and botnet called Satterbot. Today we're not going to talk about reversing. We did not reverse the binaries. There are two things why not. First, it was already done by other researchers, so we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, let's say. And second, this is kind of out of scope for us because we are studying malware behavior on the network. So we were mostly curious how malware behaves in the long term running in a sandbox. We also a little bit narrowed down the scope on focusing mostly on WordPress sites because this is the most popular content management system out there. It's like more than 18 million sites built with WordPress. And also the botnet that we were studying, we observed that it was brute forcing WordPress sites. So that was our goal. So brute forcing is basically the attack which is trying to break the authentication system. And WordPress authentication system is form-based, I'm sorry. So you need to put the username and password. So in order to log in, there is another way how you can authenticate yourself by using the XML remote procedure call, where the XML data transferred over the HTTP. And this feature is implemented in WordPress by default. It's not primarily used for authentication, but it requires username and password. So as I said, brute forcing is trying to break in the authentication method. And we divided brute forcing attacks into two parts. The first part is a vertical brute force attack, where the one infected host is using dictionary, like list of passwords, and it's trying them all against one website. And the horizontal brute force attack is where the infected host has, let's say, a list of sites for brute forcing and has only one password. So it goes and tries this password to all of the sites only once. So to understand the problem, I'd like to introduce you the overview of brute forcing malware. And I'd like to start with the year 2009. This is the first record that we were able to find regarding the distributed brute forcing attacks. It was reported on the Sans blog post the personal experience of the user who obtained the small PHP script, which was taking 3 parameters like curl to perform HTTP requests, then the parameter for passwords, and the third for sites, and launch the brute forcing. I need to remind you that the WordPress was created in 2003, and I'm pretty sure there were attempts to brute force it, but we were able to find the earliest record of documentation of the attack in 2009. So if you guys have the earliest data, please share, that would be really nice. The next year I'd like to cover is year 2012. And it brought us Stantinka. Today, guys from ESET is going to cover that in details. We were curious. Stantinka was discovered in 2017, but was operated since 2012. We were curious in particular in the one of the plugin it was using. It's a modular botnet, and it uses the brute plugin, which is basically able to launch the dictionary attacks against Joomla and WordPress sites. So the next year, it brought us Fordisco, also known as VP Cracker. And Fordisco was the campaign which got great coverage in media. It was reported. It was like the first big attack on that scale, and it was targeting Windows machines and obtaining the list of passwords for brute forcing from the command and control, and the username for brute forcing were hard-coded in binaries. The other thing interesting about Fordisco, though, is that sometimes it was delivering PHP backdoor called filelessman, and that is the small redirector which was doing the scan on the background of the user agent. And if the requirements met, it was redirecting users to the Stix exploit kit. Also, the hacked by Fordisco WordPress sites were used by the black hole exploit kit, which was reported by several other researchers, and as well as the SteelRat botnet, which was using WordPress sites to deliver spam. So this is all for the 2013, and the next year is 2014, which brought us MIAM. This malware was reported by the security researchers operated under the handle malware must die, and then the researchers from Yandex did a great research on the MIAM, and they published a paper on virus bulletin. So MIAM is actually targeting Linux web servers, and MIAM had like around 6 plugins, which all of them designed for brute forcing from different services, like from FTP services, do the crawling and parsing, and also perform brute forcing of WordPress sites. It is also interesting that researchers mentioned in a paper that they found out that MIAM linked with Fordisco. The next year I'm going to cover is going to be 2015, and it brought us actually 3 interesting malwares. The first is Athra, and it was reported by the researcher from Vivid Security, who was personally experienced the brute forcing attack on his personal WordPress site. He noticed that the whole IP addresses which attacking his site actually belongs to devices, and devices of the Athra routers and modems. He started to investigate, and he found out that all of them were having the default passwords, which apparently was abused by some group of malicious actors, and who launched some piece of malware, which launched then the distributed brute forcing attack against WordPress sites. It is also interesting that at the same time, Brian Krebs published the blog post about the Lizard Squad hacking group, which were using DDoS tool to knock in offline lots of websites. And it was the link between the Athra devices and default passwords and Lizard Squad as well. Well, unfortunately, researchers did not publish which malware was responsible for the brute forcing as well, so we are not aware of that. So the second malware, which also appeared to be in 2015, was discovered by Veronica Valeros. She was actually studying Andromeda and Gamaru botnet. She let it run in a sandbox for 30 days, and she found out that after 14 days, the behavior of the malware changed. The second payload was delivered, and she named it as a CMS catcher. She was actually presenting this on the BotConf in 2015. So this new payload was responsible for the brute forcing. It obtains the list of passwords from the bot master, and it was launched the brute forcing attack with the default credentials, admin. And for the 4 days of observing the activity, the bot tried to log in 200,000 sites, which is pretty aggressive. And the last malware that happened to be in 2015 is a ransomware Traldash. After decrypting users' files, it didn't stop here. It actually obtained several other payloads, and one of them was CMS Brute. This is the malware which was contacting its command and control servers in the Tor network, obtained the list of passwords, and launched the brute forcing attack. So this is all what I'm going to cover in 2015, and the next and the last year is 2016, which brought us two interesting events. First, there was discovered one unknown ISP provider which was responsible for 1.65 million brute forcing attacks daily. So this is actually the traffic that was coming from this ISP is actually more than all brute force traffic coming from the OVH, GoDaddy, and Rostelecom. And at the same time, researchers from Word Defense published the blog post about botnet called Chicken Kiev, which was using WordPress sites for delivering the malware, and apparently they linked this activity with the unknown ISP responsible for the lots of brute forcing attacks. So we can see that brute forcing attacks are very straightforward. They have only one goal: to log into, to get the valid credentials, and that's it. They are automated, like as we can see in terms of the unknown IPS, 1.65 million attacks per day, and it still works. So the second part of my presentation is going to be about the Satterbot botnet. I want to say a little bit about the setup, how we launched the botnet, the binaries. We used simple VM, and we let it sit in the bot for 4 days until it actually got blocked, with no user interaction, and we installed the BitTorrent client because otherwise bot is not functional. So Satterbot is not something new. Actually, it was discovered in 2013, and this is the basically post from the forum where the user is saying, well, my girlfriend downloaded something from the torrent and she's infected. And this is the detection, this is how these binaries were detected in 2003. But I have an access to the VirusTotal intelligence, and the same bot is actually detecting in 2017 as a Satterbot. Satterbot is a modular botnet. It has 4 modules: backdoor, downloader, web crawler, and brute forcer. And we're gonna mostly focus today on the last 2. The infection starts when the user is searching for pirate software or movies in search engines. And he might ended up on the compromised sites hosting infected by Satterbot torrent. After the downloading the torrent file, in case of the movie, the folder comes with the free files: movie, codec pack, and text file. And in the text file, it said the instruction to run the codec pack in order to watch movie correctly. And when the user ran the codec back, the Stutterbot DLL loaded, and the error message popped up. But at that time, the host becomes infected by the Stutterbot and becomes the part of the Stutterbot network. After that, the crawling starts. It was reported before that bot is using free search engines to find the list of sites. It is performing, these three search engines are Bing, Google, and Yandex. So bot is using the combination of words to find the list of sites and then to try and brute force them. So this is the search, how the search looks like in Bing, and it's we were curious if all the search engines are having the same list of words being searched. So since the bot is communicating in HTTP, we were just get all flows to these searches and extracted the words. And we found out that in Bing and in Google, bot is searching pretty much the same list of words. So for example, the top 5 search words in Bing are the beauty, then report, data, Google, and in Google it's beauty, data, skin, report, Google. It's like kind of same. And Yandex apparently stands out. In Yandex, bot is searching combination of letters. So here is the small snippet. The list is actually longer. After the bot acquires the list of the list of sites, it tries them it's checking the framework they're running. So in our case, we observed only that bot is checking if sites are running WordPress or not. It is performing GET requests to these sites, and after the successful result found, the brute forcing starts. It was reported before as well that the bot is attacking sites using only one password and attacking them only once. So one password, trying to brute force site only once. Yes, indeed, we observed this behavior as well. Also, the attack happens to be with a simple get post request to the admin panel where the bot is trying to log in, and also it is using the XML RPC and specifically the call VP get user blogs. So here in this example, you can see there is the host name used as a domain name as a username, and the password is magic. So the bot is, as was reported before, using the only one password. Yes, we saw it. We call this a standard credential combination. So the main name is a username and one password. Yes, we saw it. But we also saw the non-standard credential combination used. So in this case, you can see that the name of the site is something vodacannal something ru. And the parameter that bot is using as a username is different, as well as the password change. Since these all examples are coming from the one data set, which was like 4 days of capture, clearly we can see that the bot is changing the passwords. This example is in particular interesting because of 2 things. I'm a native Russian speaker, and Vodakanal means water canal, and the password is swimming, and I'm not sure if there was some logic behind of it or it's just a coincidence. And the second thing interesting about it is that the username that bot is trying to log in is actually a real username. It's, we suspect that bot is using user enumeration scan, where the script is basically scanning by numerical user ID, try to reveal real usernames. So this one is actually a real username. We also found out that bot is trying to brute force one website more than one time. So here is the Romanian site at 2 p.m. brute forced with the password Makito, and at 6 p.m. the same site brute forced with the password system. We were curious if the bot is using some well-known password dictionary, so we extracted all passwords from the capture, And we kind of did the visualization, and we thought that maybe the most tried ones is going to be admin, we were hoping. But even from this visualization, you can see that the most one tried is Pericles or Yamaha, which is not admin, unfortunately. So we decided to do the small breakdown of the passwords, and here you can see the top tried passwords, and indeed, the Pericles was used around 50,000 times. In fact, for the 4 days of capture, we were able to extract more than 500 different passwords, and they are not listed in any known dictionary, password dictionary. So we assume that it was specifically crafted by an attacker for this bot. We also found out that the bot is actually trying to brute force everything. So here is like we saw that it tries to brute force Twitter and Snapchat and Giphy. So it's brute forcing actually absolutely everything. We were wondering maybe that the attack was targeting a specific country. We did a breakdown on the TLDs, and the attack is actually distributed. It's not targeting any specific country. The most targeted TLD is .com, and the high number might explain that lots of users are hosting their blogs on the WordPress.com. So since the bot is basically brute forcing everything, that might explain that number. But the breakdown on the country TLDs, you can see that there's no attack against any specific country in here. So when we started to look at the starter bot, we had around 4 IPs of the command and control service. We used Maltego to visualize and potentially find other intel. And we ended up with that graph. It's not even worth to show because it's so big. And we also extracted some other useful information out there. So for example, we noticed that the changes in the URL path. Here you can see this is the path from the URLs from the 2017, 16, and 17. And the year 15 and 16 are pretty much the same, except the domain name is different. But in 2017, the path completely changed, and the version became 3. We also found out that one of the command and control servers were linked to the email, and in fact, it's only one command and control server which were linked to email. We didn't find any other information. We were curious how often the bot is trying to connect to the CNC service as well, and I did a little connection sequence for you. So when you run this other bot, there are lots of BitTorrent, the torrent traffic, and the advertisement, and then all connections get closed, and the bot performs the connectivity check to Google. And then right after, it contacts the first CNC. In fact, it is sending GET requests to this CNC every 2 hours, and post request every 10 seconds. Right after the crawling starts, bot is searching combination of words in search engines and then contacts the second CNC. The response comes in the DNS text record, which is encoded. So in fact, we observed for the 4 days of capture or the connection, the DNS request to this CNC only once. And right after, the third CNC contacted, so we assume that the text record, which is encoded, actually contains the location of the third command and control server. The third CNC is heavily used for reporting only. The bot is sending only post requests to it every 16 minutes. And then brute forcing starts. And then we also saw the fourth CNC, which was contacted during the 4 days of capture only twice. And both of the time it delivers binary. And I want to mention that the third and fourth CNC are sharing the same IP address. So since we use the Maltego, we extracted all of the command and control servers for all of these years. And we noticed some pattern in there. We break it down into groups. So for example, here you can see that we actually called it lazy admin approach because you can clearly see that this was an attempt to name the infrastructure somehow. So for example, in the force group, there are these domains which are used for the which are hard-coded. The second one is the ones which are delivering encoded text record and basically contains the location of the third command and control. The slave ones are those ones which are used for the reporting, where the bot's sending only post requests to it. And the boom ones is just the ones which are connecting to the binary delivering or the torrent trackers. We also were able to obtain the rest of the domains. They are not that clearly named, but still has some specific words keep repeating among them. Okay, so after all of that, you're probably wondering, why should I care? I don't have a WordPress site, nor do I. But think about the bigger scale of the problem. We saw that WordPress, like any site, is most of the time the initial starting point of any attack. And one infected site can infect thousands of users. So imagine 1,000 infected sites can infect 100,000 of users. So the problem is, so it's kind of like a big pool for attackers and also the anonymity. So let's conclude the presentation today. We found out that WordPress, the content management system, including WordPress, were probably brute force since the very beginning of their creation. The attacks are still there, they still works, and it's still used by attackers. The infected sites, or just in general site, is an important starting point of any infrastructure of the malware. And we also found that that brute forcing is not really very much researched. We saw dozens of blog posts, and it's a very valuable intel about the brute forcing, but we did not see and find any extensive research on this topic. So we also, we did not measure the successful rate, and it's kind of really hard for us, which is fall down into our future work, as well as we are curious to find out how often the password changed. And then we're also interested if those successfully hacked sites, which malware use them in the next, in their malicious purposes. So that's all for today from me. The datasets released on the stratosphere-ips.org, you can search it, as well as other data there. Is a bro output, an Argus output, and PCAPs, and DNS traffic, everything. And yeah, I'm happy here to answer your questions if you have one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Anna? Come on, don't be shy.
Hi, thank you for your talk. You presented an interesting technique in which the malware goes to the first CNC server in order to get a specific domain in which he should get his TXT record and then follow on and on. What, in your opinion, is the reason for using this technique?
Sorry. Can you please probably repeat, because I...
Yes, you showed an interesting technique in which the malware goes to the first command and control server in order to find a domain in which he will get his TXT record,
okay.
and then will follow forward. How would you explain the usage for this technique? Why is it necessary?
I'm actually have never thought about it, to be honest. It's actually a good question. But maybe it's just trying to avoid somehow the detection, because no one, but I'm actually not sure. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I need to think about it. Thanks.
Any other questions? No? So thank you again, Anna.
Thank you.
Great to be here.